Disclaimer. The contents of Studio 151 podcast do not represent the views and beliefs of the TU Media Lab or the University of Tulsa.
Welcome to the Balls Talk Sports Super Bowl recap. I'm Elson Gratz, joined by my co-host Victor Ratliff. And in case you missed it, the season is over, the Chiefs are finally dead, and as we're recording this on Valentine's Day, love is in the air. There's no place I'd rather be spending my Valentine's Day evening. What about you, Victor?
Yeah, no. This is the place. If it's not Balls Talk Sports, I don't want it.
We didn't get our Super Bowl predictions episode out, right? Audio got corrupted?
We didn't. The audio got corrupted. And just so you guys know, we got everything right. And normally when we say that, we're being normally we always get everything right. We all know this. But normally
Correct.
when we say that, we might be stretching the truth a little bit. We are not stretching the truth. That Super Bowl prediction show, we said like a bunch of things, and at least 90% of them came true. We nailed both of the defensive game plans. We nailed the X factors for what the Eagles needed to do to stop Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and what the Chiefs needed to do to win. We got all that. You'll never hear it, and you won't believe us, but that doesn't matter because we know.
You basically didn't need to watch the Super Bowl if you listened to this unreleased episode of the Balls Talk Sports NFL podcast.
Would have told you everything you needed to know. As you guys don't know, we both predicted the Eagles to win because we are ball knowers. And
Victor, did you call him by 2 scores?
no, I had him. I think I had him like 26-20, so not 2 scores.
I had him at something like 23-20. But yes, we are both going down on the right side of history.
And it's good to feel. We didn't side with evil.
No,
We
no way.
believed that good could prevail even the hardest circumstances, and it did.
We never cave.
Nope.
All right, are you ready to get kinky?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, this is the recap episode. Where do you want to start with the Super Bowl?
I think we got to start with I think we got to start with Patrick Mahomes because it's what everybody talks about and it's what everybody wants to hear. Let's talk about how he played in the game before we talk about what this means for his legacy, which I'll spoil it for you. It means very little in the grand scheme of things. But how he played in this game was not well. People are going to try and blame the offensive line for this loss, and they should. It was awful, and it was a big reason. If he has a clean offensive line, they absolutely have a shot at winning this. But it's hard to say that he doesn't deserve any bit of the blame. Because, yes, it's hard to make plays whenever guys are right in your face, right? Whenever you're getting constant pressure on you. But you still need to do that. If you're going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, if you're going to be the best quarterback in football like we ascribe to Patrick Mahomes, you need to be able to make plays with hands in your face, and he just couldn't do it today. They got to him early and often, and he got rattled, which is what we talked about in our predictions episode. If you can rattle Mahomes, that is the best chance you get, because when Mahomes is rattled, when Mahomes knows the pressure is coming, that is when he makes mistakes, and he made a lot of mistakes last Sunday.
That conversation for me it's just kind of a challenging topic. I almost don't feel like it's worth saying, oh, Patrick Mahomes should have been better in this game. Because if Patrick Mahomes in this game is anything other than literally flawless, the Chiefs are still losing by multiple scores. That's how big the talent disparity was. I think that the number of NFL quarterbacks who, with that type of offensive line performance, which we'll get into in a minute, it was straight up atrocious, authentically one of the worst of the season. The number of quarterbacks who can keep that game close is probably 0. Maybe a Lamar, Josh Allen, if they are really on, they can extend enough plays and hang in the pocket and find guys downfield. But then again, he didn't really have people open to throw to either.
Brady would have won it.
Brady would have won.
Brady would have won that game.
I think it's really, really hard to keep your team in it when they're getting pressure with 4 rushers, so the Eagles were able to keep everybody back in coverage. And the thing is, the Chiefs like to pick teams apart. They like to kind of poke and prod and find the holes in your zones. The Eagles just ran a bunch of cover 2 man, more or less. And if nobody's open against that, nobody's open against that. Another thing the Eagles are so good at is keeping quarterbacks contained, keeping them within the pocket. There were not escape lanes for Mahomes. He was trying to step up and then, oh shit, Milton Williams is in my face. Now I got to slide to the right. And Moro Jomo, somehow, or Jalix Hunt is closing this off. And he was able to escape for a few and eke out some key first downs, but then we saw with Oren Burks and Zach Bond sitting back because they didn't have to bring extra rushers, he just got cleaned up for the most part. So did Patrick Mahomes play well? Absolutely not. Does any quarterback play well in this game script? Probably not.
It's very tough. You're right. And I'm not knocking him for playing bad. I'm knocking him for how bad he played.
It was rough.
Because we have seen that kind of offensive line performance in the playoffs. I don't know. Joe Burrow handled it well. He wasn't going against the Eagles. He wasn't. And he had better receivers. But Joe Burrow handled that very well. And he still didn't have the best games when going against these elite pressure units while his offensive line was letting guys through. But he made the necessary plays to keep it at least close. And now the talent disparity was so big that nobody could have kept it close. I agree. But you can't make the plays that he did. Also, it's the fact that a lot of his mistakes didn't come under pressure. A lot of his mistakes came when, well, either he was flushed out of the pocket, so he's on the move, but there's no one there. That's what happened when he made the pick six to Cooper DeJean. He was on the move. There was nobody in his face. He had gotten out of the pressure, and then he just makes a stupid play. It was a mental thing for Mahomes. He got rattled, and he made mistakes, and that is something that has actually become a trend with Patrick Mahomes. When he gets rattled, when there's consistent pressure, he just kind of breaks down. First of all, because he doesn't see it often, but second of all, I don't know why he just continues to break down when there's consistent pressure. That's why it's so important that Kansas City has a great offensive line normally. So we don't see the side of Mahomes a lot, but Philadelphia knew how to attack it. Fangio did a fantastic job at exploiting that weakness, making Mahomes make mistakes, because if he doesn't make that pick six, if he doesn't throw that other pick, I mean, they're not going to win, but it's closer, and you have a chance. And also just a lot of errant throws, missed guys that were open when he was on the few times he was clean. Other than that one ball to Worthy, I think he was pretty inaccurate on Sunday. So we've seen guys perform under that kind of pressure before, and for all of Mahomes' accomplishments, he's never seemed to perform in the Super Bowl whenever it's not easy.
Is it just me? Or does it feel like he doesn't really have that sort of make-up arm strength anymore? Like that he can trigger late on something or throw it kind of through a linebacker where they just can't close that space in time. Watching him, it doesn't feel like he has that Josh Allen sort of arm. It feels like he's playing behind a little bit.
He's never had the Josh Allen arm, but it does feel like he had more of it. It feels like maybe there's a little bit of zip loss, and maybe it's just become because of that lack of use. I'm not using as much, so I don't remember how to put the zip on the ball as much, because it is a technical thing as well. It is a lot of arm, but if you're not doing the exact right motion, you're not going to get the most out of the ball. So I think that he absolutely can tap into that if he chooses, and I hope that I hope that the Chiefs continue to lose, but I hope that the Chiefs, for Chiefs fans' sake, they look at how they're running things and they say, okay, maybe we just let Mahomes rip it a little bit more.
And I do think it's important to note, probably the play where that felt most apparent was on the pick six to Zach Bond, which was a fantastic catch by Zach Bond, by the way.
Yeah.
He speared that ball diamond technique like a wide receiver.
Did he catch that?
It was fantastic grab. He was getting, was it Tooney, just like backed into his chest?
Yeah, that one wasn't really on him because Tooney got backed into it as he released, so it kind of like he got turned as he was releasing, so it wasn't his fault. The ball came out weird.
Yep, and when you don't have a clean pocket, it's much harder to step into your throws. You have to be light on your feet. You're throwing from odd arm angles and odd platforms. So I think that probably explains a lot of it. Here's a take that I've kind of been internalizing for a while, and I didn't want to say it because this is Balls Talk Sports, and we got balls. But I don't have the balls to say that Patrick Mahomes might be like the fourth best quarterback in the NFL until the Super Bowl. Victor, hear me out. What does he do really, really well? Like, what is Patrick Mahomes' dominant trait besides the clutch factor, which I think is real, but, oh, man, it can only do so much legwork for him.
That's a fair question. Again, because you talk about his arm strength, he doesn't do that at the top level. But I tell you, I think he is one of, if not the best processors in the game, just reading a field, quickly figuring out where the ball has to go, how his receivers play. I think he's the best in the league at that. You
think he's better than Burrow?
That's the one guy I'd be like, I don't know. It depends on the play. I think he's
better than Allen.
Yes,
okay.
I think he's a better processor than Allen. I think the only guy I'd put up there with him is Burrow as far as a processor and seeing the field. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and part of that is Andy Reid and that scheme. But he is truly elite at that and knowing when to put the ball, where to put the ball. But I do think he is not a top 5 accurate quarterback in the league anymore. I think he used to be. I don't know. He just has not been as accurate. It's not just this year too. It's been the past couple of years. It's kind of deteriorated a little bit. He can still throw a great ball, put it on him in crazy spots, but as far as accuracy, which is we generally like to define that, especially in the scouting community, as consistently accurate, consistently precise balls. That's what accuracy is. He's not consistently precise as far as when you compare him to the top guys like Burrow, So I don't think it's ridiculous to say that. I wouldn't put him at the 4th best quarterback in the league. I just think before this season, I firmly had Patrick Mahomes in a tier of his own. And as the season went on, I was like, I don't know if I can justify having him in a tier of his own because of how well these other guys are playing. And with the way Patrick Mahomes has played this season, I do think I'd have him in a tier with himself, Allen, Jackson, and Burrow. And whenever you have those guys in that tier, you can put anybody above anybody, and you'll have an argument, and I might agree with you. You know what I mean? You could go Burrow, Jackson, Allen, Mahomes. That's fine. You can go Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, whatever you want to do. And it has an argument. So that is where I think Mahomes is at. Currently, I don't think he's worse than those guys, but I also don't think he's better.
One more thing I wanted to talk about before we get into Mahomes' legacy, or I guess the way I wanted to respond to that. You talk about the processing, and I absolutely think it's top-notch. I think that that's part of the clutch factor as well, how he can so consistently make the correct decisions and get the ball out on time. There are 2 things that give me a little bit of pause when we're talking about that as a dominant trait. One is that he's very good at avoiding bad decisions, and it's draft season. We can talk about scouting methodology a little bit. I kind of divide up quarterback processing into a few different aspects, like the ability to go through progressions, the ability to assess risk and reward in your head, and that ties into avoiding the negatives, like that's the decision-making component. Should I throw this? What are the odds it's intercepted versus just dissecting a coverage? It's playing the risk-reward game in your head. And it felt like more so this season than we've seen from Mahomes in a long time. He was willing to throw some very dicey balls, and we saw that on the Cooper DeJean play. We saw it on the game sealer against the Bills. And look, I know he's trying to go out and make a play, and that is one thing I love about Patrick Mahomes. Even when they were down by 1,000,000 points, people will talk about how he was stat padding. He was trying to keep his Chiefs in the game. He was out there throwing punches, and I think that Patrick Mahomes is the ultimate competitor. He's going to be aggressive. I don't think that he's an A-plus decision maker at this phase. I think that he certainly has a leg up on Lamar in the true processing aspect of the game and having a deep arsenal of what you understand and recognizing safety rotations and all that. But in terms of avoiding throwing the ball to the defense, I don't think that he's the best in the NFL. And he's also in a very unique scheme where the Chiefs don't really work every area of the field. This is an extremely quick passing and poke and prod at the middle to short zones.
Yeah.
He basically didn't throw the deep ball with any success this year. And I feel like I have to knock you a little bit if you're essentially only attacking the first 2 layers of the defense. And I think we saw the lack of a deep ball in the Super Bowl because the Eagles were able to put everyone in those zones and lock those areas up, and the Chiefs didn't have any answers. So those are the 2 things that give me a little bit of pause for processing as an elite trait with Patrick Mahomes, is that it's a unique offensive scheme, and I don't think he's doing quite as much as some of the quarterbacks in the NFL, even if he's doing it at an exceedingly high level. And I don't think that the decision-making is A-plus right now. It's going to be fascinating to see because I think that they're probably going to reload on some weapons. They're going to make adjustments. That's what Kansas City always does. It's a fantastic front office. And I think next year, this will be year 3 if Mahomes isn't an exceptional player next year. This will be the 3rd year consecutively of him just being pretty good instead of elite. I think that's when we truly learn what Mahomes is.
Agreed. I will say I kind of factor decision making. That doesn't factor into as much processing as me. Processing is stuff that happens before the ball is thrown. But I get that you you can factor that in, and that's perfectly that. Whenever I do my trait rankings, which determines the overall tape grade for my prospects, I factor in decision making into processing for the most part. So makes a lot of sense. But yeah, just like I see your point about he doesn't really attack deep. I don't know if that's necessarily his fault. It's not his fault because of the scheme. I don't think it's the scheme's fault either, though, because we've seen them do it before. We saw them more last year than we did this year, and it's because they don't have a run game right now. It's really hard to attack with the deep ball against the too high safety right now. And pretty much the only way coordinators have found the ability to do that is consistently is through the play action game. And the run game is basically no threat for Kansas City right now, unless they're playing Buffalo. It's been basically no threat this entire season, so they haven't had the ability to tap into the play action game consistently. And when they have, it's been mostly intermediate is all they've been able to get. Those deep shots haven't been able to come open. They also just don't have many athletes in the room that can win deep other than Worthy, and he really only came on towards the latter half of the season. So I've seen him do great things processing deep. That's why I can trust that he can. And I think he is an elite processor. And I also just don't think there's anybody better at recognizing a disguise coverage in complex coverage than Patrick Mahomes. When you're looking at rotating safeties before, he could have made a lot more mistakes last Sunday than he did.
That's a good way to put it.
There are a lot of guys who play a lot worse of a game. He played a bad game. I think there are maybe 5 or 6 guys that play a better game in that scenario, which is still saying a lot because Mahomes is great. So he played under. There should be no one that could have played a better game in the Super Bowl than Patrick Mahomes. So he played under his skill level or his perceived skill level, but could have been a lot worse.
Watching this game unfold, it didn't really even feel like the Chiefs should have been there. It didn't feel like they were the first or second best team in the NFL. And that it's like there's a fog of war because we don't know what's coaching and what's clutch and what's luck and what's just veteran attention to detail. So it's tough to set the expectations and say if you plugged X quarterback into this offense, what it would look like. I still feel like I don't understand what the hell the Chiefs were.
Yeah.
But talking about Patrick Mahomes in the game, you said you don't think this impacts his legacy in a big way. Tell me more about that.
I mean, he's 3-2 in the Super Bowl at 29 years
Choker.
old. Like, yeah, you know who else was 3-2 in the Super Bowl at 29 years old? Tom Brady. Like, nobody gives a shit. I will give you this: Tom Brady did not ever get blown out in the Super Bowl. And I don't think Mahomes has an argument to be the GOAT right now, like a lot of people are saying.
People are saying that?
A lot of people have, and they did head into the game. If Patrick Mahomes wins this game, he's the GOAT. If he's already the GOAT because he hasn't won that game yet.
Oh, how soon we forget.
Yeah, no. I mean, Brady was one of a kind, but that I'm not talking about that. Just in specific, this game doesn't affect his legacy. He's already won 3. I mean, a bad Super Bowl, it happens to pretty much everybody except for Tom Brady, man. Peyton Manning is an all-time legacy, and he put out some stinkers in the playoffs, including the Super Bowl. How soon we forget that Saints game, right? So I don't think this affects him at all. If he does it again, yes, it does. Because he played so well in the Tampa Bay game, that score was not a reflection of his effort and his play in that game. I'm going to give him a pass for this one. I don't think that this affects his legacy because his legacy also hasn't been written yet. We've still got 10 more years of Mahomes left. So I don't think this is going to change anything.
So we were talking about Patrick Mahomes' legacy. Oh, yeah. This should tell us a lot about how freaking good the Chiefs have been since Mahomes has been their quarterback, that he made the Super Bowl. And people are going doomsday on what this means for Patrick Mahomes' greatest of all time candidacy.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. They have been a stellar football team every single year Mahomes has been a starter. Now, I do think that this impacts his legacy in a meaningful way, even if it doesn't diminish it. If he does win this, and he does achieve the first true three-peat in unified NFL history, you know, the GOAT candidacy starts to be within reach, is what I will say. Whereas right now, he still needs to have the unprecedented Brady back end of his career. Like, Brady was one of a kind. Patrick Mahomes needs to now make Tom Brady 2 of a kind.
Yeah.
Whereas if he wins the Super Bowl and they three-peat, I do think he has a little bit more margin for error just because of the sheer rarity of that sort of accomplishment. He would be one of a kind in his own way. So I think it's a missed opportunity for Patrick Mahomes and his chance to be the greatest quarterback, maybe greatest player to ever do it. But come on. We're not going to nitpick over this.
No, yeah, and it doesn't negatively affect his
He made the Super
legacy.
Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, he made the Super Bowl. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson both haven't. You could count on your fingers the amount of times they've made the Super Bowl, and you would expend zero effort because they haven't made it yet. And they're both incredible, probably future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. It's hard to make the Super Bowl. You know why they haven't made the Super Bowl? Because of Patrick Mahomes, because he's there. So no, this doesn't impact his legacy at all. Let's talk. We talked a lot about Mahomes and the Chiefs. Let's talk about the Eagles, because we just saw one of the best start-to-finish Super Bowls in NFL history, and you can make an argument it is the best one. Probably the best 3 quarters we've ever seen. And then the fourth quarter of the game was legitimately over. Who gives a shit? They poured the Gatorade with 3 minutes left. That's how sure
awesome.
they were. That's how sure they were. This is one of the greatest rosters we've ever seen assembled.
That's just it. People are going to talk about what this means for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is ultimately the guy who got the MVP credit, which I think is an interesting conversation, by the way, because you can say that that's fair because of how much team defense the Eagles play. Like, obviously, Josh Sweat had a fantastic game.
2.5 sacks, 3 QB hits, like 10 pressures.
It was an all-around suffocating effort from the Eagles defense. And I think that is the story of the game, is how good the Eagles defense was. They forced those key mistakes from Patrick Mahomes, 2 huge takeaways, and then a fumble recovery to put it away later on a strip sack. If they're just okay, I think the Chiefs can hang in this game. But that was not the case. They removed any doubt of who the victor was going to be very early. Victor, pun intended. Well, we'll say it was intended.
Yeah.
How does Howie Roseman keep getting away with this? How does the league keep allowing this to happen? Because every draft season, every free agency cycle, it's easy to say, oh, look at what the Eagles got, because on my big board, this prospect was so high, and he got him in late first, he got him in the second round. Everybody's like, okay, you're not the GM. Let the NFL GMs handle this. And then the thing everybody expected to happen happens. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. Just the Eagles' ability to team build through the draft, I think, is pretty definitively the best in the NFL. Not only excellent scouting and getting impacts down the board, we talked about Moro Jomo and Jalix Hunt, just random-ass dudes that they went after on day 3, making impacts in the Super Bowl. But it also feels like they're ahead of the curve at all times. Like, Howie's just kind of a step ahead of movements we see. I mean, obviously, got Saquon Barkley, Jordan Mailata, a stellar player from an international pathway.
Oh, yeah.
Trading multiple first-round picks for A.J. Brown when that wasn't really done. The Eagles are playing a step ahead, and it's going to be fascinating to see if it continues, because that's how you build a dynasty, is you draft and you get these guys on rookie contracts so that you don't have to give out albatross contracts. This was a deep team sort of victory, and that's how I think the Eagles keep winning games moving forward.
Yeah, and then they're just going to take Jihad Campbell at 32 after Zach Bond leaves, and he's going to turn into an all-pro. So.
Oh, they'll get him in the second round.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pick 64?
Yes.
Or they're just going to get Travis Hunter at 32. Because he's going to pull out like the gas mask or something. That's going to drop him all the way to 32. I don't even think that would drop Travis Hunter to 32. I think he would have to kill somebody live on camera. And even then.
I hear scouts are worried about Tread taking off the tires from playing both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
It's a big red flag. Maybe his hands are like 8 7/8 inches. Something of that nature.
Instead of 10, yeah. I mean, that would be bad. But
the Eagles just clean up on these guys every year, it feels like.
It's nuts. And this defense is so dominant because they're so well-rounded. I mean, there's no weak link at all. Oren Burks was the weak link, and he was fine this postseason. So it is a masterclass in managing and team building, because Howie Roseman understands the game is won through the trenches still. He was able to really not figure that out, but we've kind of lost that for a bit. It was like, okay, we got to get a quarterback, we got to get receivers. Those are the things that are important. They are important, but you also have to have great trenches, and I'd argue trenches are more important sometimes depending on the situation. And they were more important on Sunday, because when you have these great defensive line, these great defensive pieces, not only it's great that you can develop them so well and make them all talented, but the fact that you have so many means that you're always going to have somebody at full strength. It cannot be overstated how often in the fourth quarter, it just comes down to really tired defensive linemen gutting it out. But the Eagles have like 8 guys they can throw out there whenever the fuck they want. I mean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Moro Ajomo, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Jalix Hunt. That's 8 guys. Maybe there's more I'm forgetting. You know what I mean? And then they've got a bunch of linebackers. I don't know. They can throw whoever they want on the front 7, and it will be great, which allows you so much flexibility in how you work situational football, and nobody's ever getting tired. So you can just rush 4 and let the other guys drop 7 and let your also elite secondary do what they do best and clamp down on any group. I mean, this is one of the best defenses, all-around team defenses we've ever seen. I also feel like the offense isn't getting enough credit, specifically the offensive line in pass protection. Now, the run game, we were actually, if the Eagles are going to win, they need to run the ball very well. They did not run the ball very well, and they won by a lot. Because, first of all, Jalen Hurts had a good game. We give him his lumps sometimes. I think people saying that he's an elite quarterback because of this are idiots. Robert Griffin III.
When's the last time RG3 had a good take about something?
I don't know. I'm sure it was a long time ago. He's not a bad analyst, but it's like, come on, man. I did, just for funsies, when everybody was saying that Jalen Hurts was top 5 after that win, I was just like, okay, let me just do a quick QB rankings. He finished 13th. That's good. Being the 13th best quarterback in the league is hard. It means you're a very good quarterback. I just don't think he's elite or anything. But there's something to be said for a guy that turns up in big moments. So far, Jalen Hurts has not turned up in really any playoff games except the Super Bowl. He just plays his best when he's in the Super Bowl. Because legitimately, people are saying, oh, this was one of the best QB performances we've ever seen in a Super Bowl. No. Jalen Hurts had one of the best QB performances. I truly believe this. He had one of the better QB performances we've ever seen in the Super Bowl the last time he was in the Super Bowl. But because they lost, it never gets discussed. He had a great damn game, and I thought he was going to take the next step that next year. Never did. He's still a great player. Just he needs a great situation. When he has a great situation, you'll see Sunday's game where he looks really good and functions as a good quarterback that can lead his team to victory. He made a lot of great throws. Made some not so good throws. Overall made solid decisions, but the mistakes are lowered and not as magnified because you won by so much, and the great plays are magnified because you won. So Hurts absolutely deserves credit for it. I don't think it was an undeserved Super Bowl MVP. I just pumped the brakes a little bit.
Hurts was pretty solid. He didn't win this game for Philly. The defense won this game for Philly. I thought that Jalen was pretty shaky in the first quarter to a good bit of the first half. And then the defense went out there and said, okay, we got your back. We're going to more or less put this game away, or not put it away, but give us such a definitive advantage that it's going to be really, really tough for us to screw this up. And then another feather that Jalen Hurts does have in his cap is he does not get rattled. We talked about Patrick Mahomes getting rattled. No.
Not Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts threw one of the worst interceptions of the season as a whole.
Yeah.
That felt like it was potentially a momentum changer going the Chiefs' way. Was not the case. Defense went out there and made plays, and then Hurts kept throwing haymakers for the entire rest of the game. I mean, we all saw the deep ball to Devontae Smith. A little underthrown. It was a nice throw.
That was on the money.
You thought that was straight on the money? I thought he had to work back and adjust a little bit too. But it was a really nice throw.
Yeah, it was a great throw. No, like
he went for the dagger. That's really commendable. He made the play.
Absolutely. It was a great throw. And yeah, that's a great point. Jalen Hurts does not get rattled. And there's something to say about this whole team, how they really rallied around him as a leader, because he is a great leader. And Jalen Hurts is a great guy. And like we talk about him on the football field, off the football field, he's one of the best guys in the league because, I mean, he works so hard. He's a great dude, always helping the community. He really cares about this team. He cares about football. So absolutely deserves Super Bowl win, deserves everything, Super Bowl MVP. And this team really rallied around him. He was a true leader for them. And when he did, he had a shaky first quarter. Defense said, like you said, I got your back. And they really did have his back. They did it because they were playing for him, you know what I mean? And then he turns up and he doesn't let him down. He did not miss. He made maybe I counted one mistake after the second quarter started. After Cooper DeJean made that pick six, also, well, like after they even scored that touchdown, he was basically, I'm good now. Put his guys in advantageous positions. It was an easy game. but you do have to execute. You have to execute. I don't think that there is. I don't know if all of the guys. I don't know if there's 15 guys that could play a better game than him in that game. There might be 10 guys. There might be. There might be that got 10 guys that can match that performance. It's just he played very well in this system this year, and you got to give credit to him. I was worried the playoff performances this year overall hadn't been great, especially the one against Los Angeles, but and Green Bay turned up in the Super Bowl, and it was in no small part due to this offensive line because they were unbeatable. I mean, it's really easy to make your reads and hit that deep ball and throw an accurate ball when you've got 5 seconds to think before you even think about getting hit, because Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata are locking guys up, and then there's no pressure from the interior because Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens are cleaning up, so and Mekhi Becton as well. Shout out to him. This offensive line was stellar, and I do think he has a lot worse game if they play even average.
This Super Bowl was a win for drafting in the trenches. I think it's almost a non-starter to not have at least 4 stud offensive linemen if you want to win a Super Bowl. I think that you can get away with one relatively weak link because traditionally you get one double team. You can help out your center, you can help out your guard, but I do think that you need 2 good tackles and you need a very good all-around starting 4. We talked about the defense as well, and the Eagles don't have a dominant one-on-one pass rush winner. They have guys who've been that at times for the season, but they don't have a superstar.
Yeah, no. Smith had his moments. Maybe he takes a step forward.
Possible.
Hopefully he becomes
great
that.
season.
Yeah, but no, not consistently.
Was it a problem in this game?
No.
You just need a deep rotation of guys who are threats to get wins, who can still play the run. So we saw the importance of trench play, but just the overall importance of best player available in the draft. I'm interested to see whether or not the NFL actually takes this game to heart. Because clearly, this is how you win Super Bowls. You win Super Bowls with very well-rounded teams. If you get a really good player in the draft, you can find a way to get them out there. Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick. Do you think that this game... Because you're just talking about Jalen Hurts is your QB 13. And I might be a little bit high on him, but I don't think he'd be top 10 for me either. Do you think this game really proves the point that you don't need an elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl? Or is this Philadelphia roster just so rare and so difficult to accomplish that the draft strategy should still be, if you're not taking best player available at, say, a skill position or in the trenches, you should be taking swings at quarterbacks?
That is a tough question because early on in this season, I posed on a What If podcast. I don't know if we actually went over it or not, but I posed the idea of what if defense wins the championship this year? How is that going to change the league? And it did. I think that when you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, you absolutely can win a Super Bowl. We've talked about this. It doesn't change my view much. I hope it changes the NFL's view. My view's always been like, when you have a guy like Jalen Hurts, if you have a good enough roster around him, you absolutely can win a Super Bowl. It's just the margin for error is a little bit slimmer. When you have that elite quarterback, it's like a nice little floor for you. It's just you're always going to be in it. You know what I mean? So I've always been a big, best player available in the draft. Let's take whatever we can. Let's build a roster and find a QB that fits that roster. Or hopefully we already have him on the roster, but if we don't, we look for him. And that's why I loved Bo Nix so much coming out of this past draft, because I thought he had the ability to be like, okay, at worst, I'm going to end up as the 20th best quarterback in the league. At best, I'm going to end up as at best, top 5, right? But realistically, his ceiling was 10th in the league. But if you put a good roster around him, that's absolutely enough to take you there. And I'd almost prefer it. I don't know, sometimes. So we've seen teams do this other than the Eagles, notably the Lions. Holmes has really tried to build his team in trench first, and let's just get the best player available. Let's make sure that we're just filled with guys in the trenches. And it worked, but the injuries obviously kept them low. I think that this is a replicable season. I think it'll be hard to do, and it'll take years to do it. And I think teams are always going to want to take swings on quarterbacks, because if you get your quarterback, you get your Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, you've got a shot for the next 10 to 15 years. This Eagles team doesn't have a shot for the next 10 to 15 years. That window will be smaller. But it's really, you're just looking for one, honestly. If we're being honest, Dynasty's great, but most teams only are lucky to get one. So you're just looking for one. And this style of team building absolutely gives you a great chance to get one. I hope a lot of teams continue to do this thing because it's just more fun to watch overall. And if on the off chance you do actually take a swing, on the chance that you build your roster and then you get lucky with an Allen or Jackson Mahomes, that's where you can get a true dynasty, because that's what the Chiefs have been doing, building through the trenches and building best player available. At least that's what they did a few years ago. Now they've just stopped. I don't know. That they just kind of stopped there. So I think that this is a replicable. I think the NFL's already started to come around to this way of thinking. It's just not showing as much. I think Washington's had ideas like this of, yeah, we don't have any superstars. Let's just get a bunch of guys on the defensive line who can play. Let's get a bunch of linebackers who can play. They have a lot of those guys, so keep that rotation fresh. They're in the beginning of that building. So a lot of guys, I think, have started already, and I think a lot of guys are going to start because of this game.
I'm going to plant a little bit of a flag here. And to be fully honest, this might age really poorly. But hey, this is Balls Talk Sports.
Yeah.
This Super Bowl has not persuaded me to draft quarterbacks that don't have 7 or 8 upside, top 7 or 8, to be clear, in the first round.
Fair enough.
I am still going to keep that strategy at a distance because the Eagles this season were an example of everything going absolutely perfect. Best offensive line in the league, fantastic defensive coaching. Victor, why didn't we have Fangio in like our defensive assistant coach of the year episode?
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Because I was pissed at myself for not shouting him out actually after the fact.
There's really no excuse. I don't know why I didn't consider him. I definitely should have. But when I was going through defensive coordinators, he just didn't. Like, I had a master list of all guys that I thought I should consider. I guess I just skipped over him. It's my fault.
And I shouldn't have just done it off the top of my head. I probably should have looked at a list of teams or something.
No, I went to Wikipedia, and I guess I skipped over Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio, I love you. Broncos fans love you. You are forgiven for everything, man. For everything, you're forgiven. We love you. Come back.
Your offensive coach is now a head coach of Kellen Moore with the New Orleans Saints. You were at the cutting edge of the running backs can be game wreckers movement, and you got Saquon Barkley on, a relatively bargain contract. You found Zach Bond, who went from rotational linebacker to quite possibly the best linebacker in the NFL. You got Pro Bowl caliber defensive back play from Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper Jean, neither of whom were even top 10 picks. So I guess you can win a Super Bowl with, a top 15 quarterback if you have a generational GM and really, really good coaching and good overall luck, because Zach Bond being that good was not a predictable factor. You can say it was good pro scouting. Maybe they saw something, but they didn't think that they were going to get this. That did look like a weakness coming into the season. And you largely avoid injuries, like no meaningful season enders or anything like that. I don't think that's replicable.
That's fair.
It might be replicable. I trust that Victor will fix that in post-production.
We'll see.
3 or 4 times in a 100-year sample size. But this was sort of a generational season for the Eagles, I think. Truly, everything went right. Jalen Hurts does make it complicated because, like you said, I think a lot of the quarterbacks in that sort of top 15 tier, maybe the top 20 tier, the very large tier 3 of pro quarterbacks, a lot of those guys like Jared Goff, you have concerns about them shrinking in the playoffs. And Jalen Hurts pretty clearly has a trait where that's just not going to happen. He is going to play balls to the wall in the playoffs, and he is going to go out and try and drag his team to victory. So maybe if your tier 3 quarterback elevates his performance, maybe I'm more comfortable with that. But I'm still, looking for a guy that I can take in round 2, who I think has upside, who I can sit and develop behind a good offensive line, draft the trenches, or taking a quarterback prospect like a Jalen Hurts caliber guy, also in the second. I'm still staying away from the Bo Nixes of the world in the first round. And again, if that doesn't work out, Victor is going to let me know. If Bo Nix wins a Super Bowl, Victor is going to let me know, and I will take my L on this one, but that's just where I currently stand.
That's fair enough, and it is riskier. The thing is, this season isn't replicable. Fuck. It almost
Both
was.
of us.
It almost was. The Lions? I mean, if the Lions have league average injury luck, they've got a real chance to beat this team. And if they beat this Eagles team, they win this game. So it's like, it isn't replicable. Fuck! God damn it! Definitely keep that in the episode. It isn't replicable, but it was this year. We saw the Lions do it. We saw them amass an elite roster full of a bunch of talent with a tier 3 quarterback. By the way, for clarity, I had Jared Goff ranked below Jalen Hurts, one spot below, 14. We saw it happen. I think it can happen. You do got to be in the NFC, because the amount of times that, like, if you have 4 shots at this game with an elite quarterback, I don't think you win all of them, right? You do got to be in the NFC to really try it. AFC teams don't have that luxury. I also think Bo Nix, I had him projected in the draft as like okay, his ceiling is 10. I don't think that's a ceiling anymore. I do think he is legit top 8 ceiling now. But also a thing about Bo Nix, that he is like Jalen Hurts in that way. In the biggest games this season, he showed up. In the wild card game, he was the only one who showed up. He actually put together a fantastic performance in that wild card game. He's a fantastic leader. He's a fantastic locker room guy from what we've heard and everything. He's got that fire, that competitiveness that everybody is rallied around. It is no secret about that, and there's a reason that he took them to the playoffs as a rookie. And that's as valuable of a trait as any single trait that you can find in a quarterback, whether it be arm talent or something. It's leadership and it's competitive fire, and that is also the hardest thing to evaluate. So Broncos got a good one. Eagles got a great one. So that is a big factor of this as well. Hurts, maybe in terms of actual QB play, 13. If you were talking about QB value to a team, I think he'd be top 10. So that does factor in. But I think it's interesting because it is harder to win a Super Bowl like this. I think teams try. I'm not advocating for taking a guy in the first round. I'm not saying that, like, oh, you should just settle for a guy. You should take swings. But when you have a good roster, and when you see next year, our roster is going to be top 3 in the league, top 5, that's where we expect to be, I think it's okay to be like, this is our window. Let's get a guy who can take us there versus taking a swing. And if we miss, we're not even going to come close. So I think it's acceptable to do that. I'm looking for a top 5 guy, though. I'm looking for a top 8 guy to bring me to the promised land. I want to find my Jaden Daniels. You know what I mean?
I like the things you point out about Bo Nix as far as his leadership and how he played up in the big moments. I think that does really raise his ceiling, and that causes me to qualify my opinion a little bit. I am not a Bo Nix hater. I don't know if I would go as far as to say that I'm a Bo believer yet, but I could definitely get there. As for the Lions, I thought about them as well, because when they were healthy, they were the most complete team in the NFL by far. However, they lost their first playoff game. And they I think were the best coaching staff in the NFL.
Yeah.
And now they lost their OC and their DC and a defensive assistant, was it?
Well, they lost Terrell Williams. He went to the Patriots DC. He was the defensive line coach. They lost Engstrand, who's the passing game coordinator. He went to New York to be Aaron Glenn's offensive coordinator. They lost Antoine Randall L., who's now assistant head coach. He was their wide receiver coach.
Holy hell.
He's now assistant coach to Ben Johnson at Chicago. Trying to think if they lost anybody else. Like, nothing else off the top of my head.
If there's any culture in the NFL that can rebound from that and have a really good season next year, because, again, the Lions are going to get their defense back. Yeah. That was a totally unfair football God-given act to just smite the entire Lions defense. That's not predictable. So I'm sure they'll be good again next year. There's a part of me that thinks that their Super Bowl window with Jared Goff might have been just this season.
I agree.
We're going to see. We're going to learn next year. We say that every single year. I'm fascinated. If we see teams that are fundamentally structured around roster talent and not quarterback play win back-to-back Super Bowls, I will eat my words, and I will say that is a completely viable way to win the big game. As for now, I'm on the fence.
Yeah, fair enough. And you also need great coordinators, which are hard to find. So that margin for error is lower, and that time frame is a lot smaller. That's why I prefer the let's get an elite QB and then try to build around him. And we'll just eat the cap, and our team's going to be a little worse, but we have that elite QB. I prefer that approach, but if you can't get that, this is a valid way to build your team versus just taking shots on Shedeur Sanders at 3.
Kenny Pickett, anyone?
Yeah, then you're going to become the Steelers if you take that stuff. You're going to become so afraid of taking another shot that you're just going to suck for the next 20 years. Which, yes, the Steelers are going to suck for the next 20 years.
I know you haven't watched him, but I'm looking for like a really definitive final take here. Is Jackson Dart a franchise quarterback? It's a yes or no question.
You heard the name? Yes. What?
He's out there throwing darts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this man, he's going to take... Trying to figure out where he's going. Hold on. Give me a second. No, the Cleveland wouldn't draft him. He doesn't have any arrests. He doesn't have an arrest record.
We're not certain he's a sex criminal right now.
Yeah, we're not certain. That's like the injury thing where if you don't know for sure, you're not going to touch it. So,
exactly.
Since he hasn't touched anybody, they're not going to touch him.
They have character question marks on Jackson Dart, potential absence of sex crimes.
Yeah. No, he's gonna take the throne. He is going to be the successor to the BallsTalkSports MVP Will Levis in Tennessee. He's gonna bring a championship to Nashville.
Is he gonna play like Will Levis? We can only hope so.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and they're gonna build around him.
Bold takes as always.
Exactly.
One thing I want to talk about: Travis Kelce. Is it time?
Yeah. He probably has another year left in him if he wants to. It sucks to go out on this note. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be... They'll be in Super Bowl contention. I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl next year. I just don't think they are. I think it might be time to hang it up. He's clearly lost multiple steps. Just propose to Taylor and live your life, man. Just...
A side note before we cover the football aspect of this a little bit more, I actually would have thought it was very cool if he proposed to Taylor after that game, after the loss, because I think that says something. Like, this doesn't need to be a public spectacle where we three-peat and then I propose.
Yeah.
I will propose to Taylor in victory and in defeat, at my highest moment and at my lowest. I would have really liked that personally.
Cool.
I do think it's time for him to hang it up. Like you said, this is the worst that he's ever been. Did you see that clip with him and Oren Burks in Scramble Drill?
No, I didn't.
So that was the play where Mahomes made the most Mahomes magic of the game happen, and he was just getting swallowed up in the pocket, sidestepping, ducking under defensive linemen, and he keeps the play alive long enough to scramble for a first down. But a flag came in midway through the play, and Kelce just gave up on it. He was standing there with Oren Burks in tow because it's man coverage like the Eagles were running the entire game. And I kid you not, for probably 5 to 6 seconds, because holy shit, Mahomes kept that play alive for a long time. If Mahomes has an elite trait besides the processing, he is really good at just avoiding getting sacked. So Kelce, who's famous for his connection with Mahomes in Scramble Drill, gives up on the play. He's barely occupying a defender because Oren Burks doesn't have any work to do. He's like, okay, Travis, you're just going to stand here. I'll stand here too. And then when Mahomes actually puts his head down and starts to run and he goes and gets the first down, Burks peels off of Kelce and goes and pops Mahomes on his way down. That's an effort issue.
Yeah.
He looks old and tired out there. And I'm not trying to be an asshole about that. It's just he doesn't have the same kind of spryness that he did at one point. It doesn't feel like he's an every play sort of player. He's like, still a good tight end in the receiving game overall. But it almost feels like his role should be as a designated pass catcher, kind of like a designated pass rusher like a Von Miller. And I just don't see that being the way for Kelce. I really think it's time.
No, and it's like, obviously I dislike Travis Kelce because he's a member of the Chiefs and, his various exploits over the years. But he is a fantastic player, and we're lucky to have witnessed him. And it does suck to see guys like this go out on a sour note. So I'm just like, preserve the legacy, my man. And he's got Jason Kelce in his corner. Obviously, Kelce hung it up while he was still arguably the best center in football. Creed Humphrey was rapping at the door, but he still had an argument to be the best center in football.
Creed Humphrey, by the way, 0 pressures credited for in this game.
Yeah, the Chiefs' offensive line played fantastically if you don't include the right tackle, the left guard, the left tackle, and half of the right guard.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
or the starting tight end who got worked in pass protection.
Oh yeah. Also, though, let's talk about this for a second, because when we make bold predictions, when we say crazy things, we're going out there. We both say them a lot, but we also take our lumps. We take our lumps whenever we're wrong. Elson, would you like to rescind your Coach of the Year vote for Andy Reid?
No.
Really? After he
Correct.
put Travis Kelce on a one-on-one against an edge rusher 3 plays in a row.
If anything, this game makes it feel to me like Andy Reid contributed more value than I had previously thought because it exposed just how little he was working with and how he was coasting by with negative talent disparities almost the entire season. Was it an ugly performance? Yes, but I think it kind of qualifies what he did earlier on. But holy shit, man. You have offensive tackles for a reason.
Adjust.
If you're that worried, put a sixth guy out there.
You got to adjust, my man. That's fair enough.
Put Wanye back out there. Come on.
I respect you sticking to your guns. Oh, boy. Yeah, at that point, just put Kingsley back out there. See, what's the worst that could happen? Mahomes dies in the field. At least that preserves legacy.
Their pass catchers weren't getting open. 8 offensive linemen.
There you go. Maybe the run game will be able to get 2 yards.
Wildcat. Take Mahomes off the field.
No, Wildcat with Mahomes.
Correct.
Which is just
much better take.
That's just the normal formation. But yeah, just run QB power with Mahomes all day. And honestly, that should have been their plan. After the Cooper Tajin pick six, why don't we just run QB power with Mahomes and hope that we just keep getting them flagged? Like, he hits him.
Lower your head, Mahomes.
Exactly.
Put the helmet down.
Draw the flags, man. This is soccer now. You're flopping. Also, Travis Kelce flopped a lot and kept trying to draw taunting penalties from the other team. He would get in their face, and then he wouldn't get flagged for it because the second offense is the one that gets flagged. And he knows that. He's in their face. He's trying to get a reaction. Eagles players, to their credit, they're just like, they're not looking at him, man. They're ignoring him because they're a well-coached, good team full of, quality football players that don't have to pull that shit. So
they just pointed to the scoreboard.
That's pathetic, but from Travis Kelce. And he's been doing it all season, but especially in the Super Bowl, that's fucking pathetic.
What about DeAndre Hopkins?
I mean, he's old, man.
He really lost it in a hurry, but it feels like that's the story of all these wide receivers at the tail end of their careers.
It's tough. He's 32. It's a really athletic position. It's a tough position to be good at when you're that old. So, Hop had a great career. Don't know if I don't think he'll be a Hall of Famer.
I think he's probably right on the fringes. I don't think
he's
that
definitely the Hall of very good.
He didn't have a sustained enough really good prime. He was really good for a long time, and when he was good, he was really good. Just the length of dominance, I don't think was quite enough.
The problem was that he played in the era of Julio Jones and Antonio Brown, so he was never close to the best receiver in the league. He was number 3 a lot, but Julio and AB were just so fucking dominant when they played that, Hop, a fantastic player in his prime, but he couldn't touch him. Nobody could.
This is a random-ass tangent. Obviously, Julio fell off in a hurry.
Yeah.
Who is he? He was never good for the Titans, so he pretty much left the Falcons after injuries.
He was all right with
was
the Titans. His first year with A.J. Brown, he was an all right player.
I agree on the all right player, but he probably got banged up and didn't produce a lot.
Yeah, dude, if Julio had functioning hamstrings, he's the best receiver of all time.
I think that's completely reasonable. But, the injuries are part of why wide receivers fall off. It's, not the most physical position, but a position where one misstep and it could all be over. You're making explosive movements over and over again. Antonio Brown actually didn't fall off. Antonio Brown was really good every single opportunity he got. He just threw it all away.
Yeah, no, the mental just kind of fell off of a cliff.
We usually think of it being the speed or the explosiveness that declines from wide receivers. With Antonio, he exited his mental prime.
His brain fell off of a cliff.
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill's interesting because he said he wants to trade, then he says he doesn't want to trade, and now he maybe does again. I don't know, man. It's just like you need a team that is lacking a deep threat, a consistent deep threat that hasn't been able to win deep because they can't run the ball that well and haven't been able to use play action that well. You need a team that is an elite quarterback with the arm to get it to him. You need a coach that knows how to use it, which there aren't many. You need a team he knows, a team he's familiar with. You know what I mean?
I think you'd look good in red.
How could you possibly know that?
I'm visualizing in my, like the jersey swap photoshops when there's all the free agency speculation. That's what I'm doing.
Oh yeah. The ones where
I could see it. I could see the red.
Maybe
the red and orange for Tyreek Hill.
Maybe I think. But anyway, I'm just putting that out there. No particular agenda. I don't think there's a team that really fits that. So,
Iowa State maybe.
Iowa State. He could do great at Iowa State. You should go back to college, Tyreek.
form a connection with Rocco Bakhtu went back to school this year. They lost their deep threat in Jalen Knoll. Big shoes to fill, but I think, if anyone could do it, it's probably Tyreek.
Absolutely.
In all seriousness, man, that would be a really interesting move because the last time we saw Patrick Mahomes play at an elite level was with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Hasn't been the same since.
It would be an unprecedented move. You never see it. It just doesn't happen where you trade a guy for 2 first-round picks and then you get him back. It just doesn't happen. So if they do it, that would be insane. That would be the equivalent of that would not be the equivalent of this because this was a lot more dramatic. That would be the equivalent of Kevin Durant Kevin Durant leaving the Thunder and then going to the Warriors for a few years and then he comes back. Actually, we have seen it done before. Never mind. The only guy who ever had the ability to do it and do it well and live up to it was LeBron fucking James. And I don't think Tyreek Hill is LeBron James, so I would advise against it.
I don't think Tyreek Hill is LeBron James either.
Yeah, LeBron left in a fashion in Cleveland. 4 years later, though, he comes back. Not welcome with open arms. Well, that championship certainly looks good on the shelf. So,
on a very similar note, I would not be opposed to Devontae Adams coming back to the Packers.
That's interesting.
I still think I'm always nervous going back and getting an aging wideout because we've seen it fail so many times. Like thinking about when this has worked out, Randy Moss with the Patriots. Obviously, there have been examples since then, but like Stephon Diggs with the Texans was a good player.
He was all right, yeah.
Got hurt.
Yeah.
I think he was really good with the Texans. He wasn't like alpha Stephon Diggs. He was still a true one, I would say.
I don't think he was.
You don't think so?
No, because whenever Collins left, whenever Collins got hurt, he was more of a guy that can function as your one, but you really prefer as your two.
That's fair. There's just not a lot of precedent for going out and getting that aging receiver on his second or third team and having it work. And if it doesn't work, I don't mean to get into wide receiver stereotypes, but things can spiral out of control pretty quickly from there. I don't think that that's as much of an issue with Devontae. There have not been off-the-field things with Devontae Adams. If he's interested in coming back to the Packers, I do still think he's a one, and I think Matt LaFleur knows how to use him.
And the thing with Adams is the guys who fall off really quick are the guys who they were all great technicians, but they had a lot of their game to do with their athleticism. And Devontae's a good athlete. He's not a great athlete. He's never made his money with his athleticism. He's made his money with being one of the most nuanced route runners we've ever seen, with having hands that don't quit, and just being an overall sound football player. You want to talk about technically great wide receivers in his prime. He was probably the best in the league as far as just knowing how to deconstruct a guy at the stem of the route and then making a clean break, catching the ball, and making the most out of the yards after the catch. Knowing how to contort his body, knowing the timing of the deep ball, the late hands, the back shoulder. He had it all. So he's one of those, if I'm going to get an older receiver, I want one in the archetype of Devontae Adams.
This isn't a comp. I want people to know that. But there's a reason that Jerry Rice was productive after age 40. By the way,
smartest receiver we ever seen.
What 40 time did Jerry Rice run?
Like a 4.72 or something?
That is a myth. And I don't know where it came from. There's no official 40 time on Jerry Rice, but all of the reputable reports that I found put it somewhere between 4.45 and 4.5. So he was not like burner fast for being the greatest wideout in the history of football. And Victor, please fact check this because I want to know if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But I did not find any indication that he actually ran a 4.7.
Yeah, I don't know. But see, you look it up and it says it's a 4.71. Hold on. You got to hear this. San Francisco's Jerry Rice record-breaking season at Mississippi Valley State caught the attention of NFL scouts. Sources vary on his 40-yard dash time, which was measured between 4.45 and 4.71. So only a quarter of a second difference. So apparently no one has any idea.
I can almost tell you with certainty that I run somewhere between a 3.5 and a 6 flat.
Yeah, I think I can do. Okay, so here we've got an interesting thing. Bill Walsh said that he ran a 4.59, which is the Niners coach whenever Rice played. If you all don't know, the former Dallas GM Gil Brandt said he was about a 4.55. So he's around in the 4.5s.
That makes sense to me.
Fitz, there's the myth that he ran a 4.7. He ran a 4.63, and people say that it was lower. So 4.7 speed's hard to make functional. Though also combine times are really like Romeo Dobbs ran a 4.7 too, and he is not slow.
He's not a tight end.
Yeah, no, he is not a tight end. He does not run like that. So I don't know about those kinds of things. But you can be effective with 4.6 speed. I don't even think Adams is at 4.6 speed. Maybe he's at 4.55, something like that. But he's obviously not the player Jerry Rice was. But nobody is. That's the smartest receiver to ever play football, the most technically refined receiver to ever play football. People that say Randy Moss is a better all-time player than Jerry Rice are idiots.
I agree. Obviously, a higher peak. Yeah. An astounding peak. One of the most astounding peaks in
sports history.
In sports history. There's a reason that we call it getting mossed all these years later, and that stuck around. But if I'm going to, take a bet on a wide receiver getting up there in age, I want it to be a nuanced separator like Davante Adams. Quite possibly the best release in the history of the game.
Oh, yeah. Holy shit. I mean, there's a reason this guy's one of the only people to ever be able to consistently beat Patrick Surtain. Now, not this past year, because Surtain, he's got him now. But first couple of years, he got him, and that is because Surtain makes his money in press coverage, and he is just impossible to beat off the line. Davante Adams' complicated release package was enough to get him free semi-consistently.
Have you ever heard of Shane Hooks?
No.
He was a wide receiver out of Auburn, like a priority UDFA level prospect last year, and he ran a 4.81 at his pro day. He's like
oh boy,
215.
Jeez.
So that wasn't a great showing.
No.
So basically, he's Jerry Rice, but even more.
They're saying Kenneth Grant's going to run faster than that at the combine this year, and he's 3.47.
What do you think he runs? Have you watched him?
I haven't watched him. When I was watching, Josh Simmons and a little bit of when I was watching Josh Simmons and Kelvin Banks this week, which I watched both of them last 2 days, I saw a bit of Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. And Kenneth, I don't know about like 40 time, but Grant is quick for someone that big. So is Mason Graham. They both shot out of a cannon off the line.
This is an absolutely insane defensive line class. If you need a defensive lineman who's not like a wide 9 speed rusher type, oh my God, you can be getting day 1 starters into maybe not day 3, but into round 3.
Yeah, it's insanely deep. And the top, you need an elite guy at the top of any position. I probably want a defensive lineman. I'll just say this. I've evaluated 5 edges so far in this class. All of them have round 1 grades or better. My grades go top 5, top 10, round 1 through 2. All of them are round 1. They're not even in the round 1 through 2. So I'm not going to say who they are because, draft season. Leave the anticipation.
Agreed.
But there is a lot of elite talent. And when I watch Mason Graham and Ken Grant, I've seen enough of them to know that they are going to be high grades. I don't know what they're going to be because I haven't done the full evaluation. But there is so much talent in this class. It is insane. If you need a guy to be franchise edge rusher, this is your year. Or franchise interior.
I hear what you're saying about keeping anticipation for the draft episodes.
Want me to drop
it? No, I'm going to drop it for you because you told me, everybody you've watched before the episode, Victor actually starts by watching the worst prospects and works his way up. So he's watched Danny Strigo and Ja Joyner from Minnesota, Baron Sorrell from Texas, who's a big riser. He's flying up my board, Savion Jones from LSU, and Jalen McLeod from Auburn.
Dude, Jalen McLeod, top 5.
Oh, I was going to say don't spoil who the top 5 guy there is.
I'm sorry.
Oh, well.
I actually do not have any top 5 prospects on my edge list. All of them are round 1 or top 10 prospects.
Oh, I thought you said you did have a top 5. Interesting.
All right. I don't. So I actually I did give a little bit away about how I feel about Abdul Carter, but
we'll cut our losses now.
Yeah, he's still a fantastic player.
Anything left to say about the Super Bowl?
No, unless you want to do some stuff like Senior Bowl or a little bit of draft talk, we can get out of here.
Let's see what I got on the Senior Bowl. So, This was a Senior Bowl that I think was dominated overall by the defensive line.
Absolutely.
It's just like continuing the same story. It looked like this was a fantastic defensive line class, and it just keeps getting better. And it's not just the guys that we know about that we expected to be really good, looking the part almost exclusively, but just random-ass dudes that I've never heard of that looked like impact players on day 1. Darius Alexander out of Toledo, I think could be a second-round pick. Excellent first
Fair.
step.
Yeah.
Looks like a savvy pass rusher, knows how to play the run. Barron Sorrell, we mentioned out of Texas, I think is a potential day 2 pick. And even like the athletic traitsy guys from small schools, David Walker out of Central Arkansas was dominant at that level of competition. And he went out there and proved it at the Senior Bowl. That's one thing I like so much about the Senior Bowl. Like, the game is whatever. It's about the practices. Yeah. It's about the one-on-ones. And not just seeing guys at new positions. Like, for example, seeing, who's the kid out of North Dakota State?
Zabel?
Yeah. Seeing Gray Zabel moved into guard and checking that box for him. It's also seeing these guys, also like Gray Zabel, from lower levels of competition, how they look against kids from Alabama and Ohio State, from the power conferences, and almost all of the defensive guys, the defensive line guys from small schools, they look the part.
Oh, yeah. And even the big school guys are showing up. There's a couple of guys that have really shot up my board. Namely, the guy who's risen the most for me, from the edge room at least, is Jared Ivey. I really like what I saw there as far as just confirming what we know you can do and showing us some new stuff. Like, oh, okay, you got a little bit of a power profile there. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all just finesse. So I really... Am I thinking of the wrong guy?
No,
that's what I thought. I was like,
Ivy had a good week, but I'm kind of smirking because staying in Ole Miss, Walter Nolan was killing people all 3 days. Like, Mike Green checked out early, which, it's fair. You made your money, get out. Walter Nolan said, no, I'm having fun. I'm going to keep winning 90% of my one-on-ones, and I'm going to keep raking in those checks. It was a fantastic week. Almost the defensive line as a whole. There were like 3 guys who I had on my list who I think their stock dropped. It was wild. As for the offensive line, I don't think there are a lot of good tackles in this year's class.
Yeah.
There wasn't really a guy who had big expectations coming in who looked like a first-round.
Let me clarify. I was thinking of Princely Amon Mielen.
Oman Mielen was good as well.
Yeah, that's because the only reason Ivy was great. But Ivy is definitely not finesse, not power guy.
That didn't make sense.
Yeah, I was like, no, I was thinking of Oman Mielen. Oman Mielen's like 240.
He's got like 34.5-inch arms as well, and it looks like he knows how to use them.
Yeah, Ivy packs a punch. Oman Mielen showed me like he can do a little bit of power. I want to clarify that I'm not an idiot.
That defensive line is so deep that it's almost hard to keep straight who's who.
Oh yeah. Well, and then the Ole Miss. Jared Ivey and Oman Mielen around the edge. And then inside, you got Walter Nolan and J.J. Peg.
I have no idea either. Pegas?
Pegas? I don't know. But, yeah, the inside, you got that guy, who are both top 10 in pressures in the nation. And also, Peg is probably the best fullback in this class as well. So, I mean, it's just
Does he play both sides?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He plays, he blocked like 50 snaps, like on the offensive line as a fullback, and he got like 15 carries or something like that.
I could say he's basically Travis Hunter.
Yeah, he's Travis Hunter. Take J.J. Pegas 1 overall.
I thought that the wide receiver defensive back matchups were, just a little more
That's generally what people come to see. But yeah, they were... No, but I don't think anybody really stood out.
Jack Bash.
Jack Bash had his moments. He's probably the biggest riser of any of the receivers. You could say Tez Johnson was a riser, but
Tez...
I don't think anybody's going to think...
Oh, he is Tez Johnson. Yeah. I'm sorry. I confuse him and Tez Walker because they're the same guy. They're not the same guy.
Not the same guy, no. But Tez, I don't think anybody in the NFL is looking at that and be like, yeah, we got to have that. That changes my opinion on Tez Johnson. But
Bash. I'm 99% sure. I assume that it was Beck initially.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is tragic, but the way that his brother who was killed in New Orleans, Tiger Bash, that's always how it was pronounced. So I think that's essentially confirmed.
Okay. Yeah, really great what the Senior Bowl did, by the way, with all the patches and everything.
Very well done.
Moment of silence they had before the game. It was very good.
Jalen Knoll, I think, shot his name up some boards.
Oh, yes. Knoll and his teammate Higgins also had a good week, too.
Higgins was what I expected that he would look like. He was shaky on day one, wasn't getting open, dropped a few passes, and he was just steady after that, which is exactly how I thought he would look.
That's the question with Higgins is, like, can you get open? You know what I mean?
Looks like he could.
Otherwise, damn good prospect. You can get open, we're cooking with something.
Elijah Arroyo from Miami. Could be a top 3 tight end in this year's class.
Yeah, because after the first 2, I mean, it's really anybody's position to grab.
I thought Harold Fannin might have a really dominant week. He wasn't bad. I thought he looked the part, is what I'll say about him. But he didn't look like a day one dominant big slot impact in the NFL, I didn't think. And then as for defensive backs, I thought this was a very meh defensive back Senior Bowl. No Quinyon Mitchells in attendance. Azarie Thomas looked the part for the most part. Maxwell Harrison was solid. Looking at my notes, Trey Amos, I think, looked about like you would expect.
Yeah.
These guys are set up to lose at the Senior Bowl. And nobody was really terrible either. I remember last year, like Kalen King. Shout out Kalen King. He was on the Packers practice squad for a little bit. There were some guys who looked really markedly bad. I'm not even going to go into the guys who I thought were clearly the worst in attendance because they were the guys from lower levels of competition who just didn't look athletic enough to hang. 2 linebackers that caught my eye. Linebackers are not usually the position you think of as being Senior Bowl standouts.
No. It's hard for them to show what they do.
And it's processing and it's sifting through traffic, and that's not really what the Senior Bowl is designed to show. Jack Kaiser was like as ahead of the curve as you can possibly be at the Senior Bowl. I don't think there was anyone who was more consistently in the right place at the right time. He carried it over to the game. He even looked the part in run defense, in team drills, and that sort of thing. Jack Kaiser looked like one of the best linebackers in this class.
Oh, yeah. He is just such a good fucking player. I mean, maybe the athleticism is going to keep him a little bit below, but, I mean, he's just such a good player that I'm willing to take a shot.
I thought it looked starting caliber, which is a box checked for me, his athleticism.
It's just and linebacker is one of those positions where I'm okay taking a guy without as much athleticism, a guy that I know that maybe you're never going to be Fred Warner or anything like that. You're never going to be a top 10 linebacker. A linebacker is such a tough position to find depth. I'm willing to take a guy who maybe just a rotational linebacker or could just be an actual starter, like your number 2, maybe your number 3 linebacker in the 3rd round, just because of how rare it is to find and how rare it is to find a guy that just knows what he's doing at the position immediately. I also thought switch Senior Bowl is awesome. I like to give some credit to the Shrine Bowl as well. Chris Paul had a great week. Chris Paul Jr. at Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, I was going to say, probably top 5 in the class at linebacker.
Oh, yeah. I mean, depending on how you view Jalen Walker, I think he's probably my number 2. And I haven't looked at Jalen Walker yet. I have when I was watching Mikael Williams, though, I did see him a fair bit at edge, and I'd be surprised if I liked him more at linebacker, is all I'll say. So Campbell's my pretty clear number 1 right now. Before really comprehensive dive into his tape, I did see a game of his, but I haven't seen anything else other than that. Campbell's my number 1 right now. I think it's Chris Paul's to lose. Is the number 2 spot, number 2 linebacker.
Shamar James declared out of the University of Florida. Add him to the board is what I will say if you don't already have him. He was one of the best overall athletes in attendance at any position. Clocked one of the top 5 speeds of the week because I don't know how they track players' speeds, but they have a system that does that. I take it with a grain of salt.
I actually do know. It's something to do with GPS trackers.
Okay.
That they have underneath their pads, but that's how they track the miles per hour. It's not like it's a metric that comes from the
they're
GPS.
hand timing it.
Yeah, no.
At all times.
Yeah, exactly. It was like I got 22 miles per hour. I got 37. It's these football guys trying to do advanced calculus on the run.
I want to say that he hit 21.7 mph. That's wide receiver speed, and he looked the part. Like I said, I take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because occasionally you get some outlier numbers. That looked like the speed that he was playing at all week long. One of the few backers in attendance who I thought looked like he could cover slot receivers one-on-one with any level of consistency. He was getting his hands up. He was finding the football. And in the run defense drills, dude was beating his guys to his landmarks. He was very, very good in the team period. Fantastic blitzer. And he was a very good blitzer at Florida as well. From my limited exposure to his tape, I think he looks a little shakier. He didn't look like a run defender overall, but if that's something he can grow into, which I think is fair to project, 6'1", 226, younger guy, so probably still getting stronger, could really be an impactful backer in this class, maybe a day 2 player.
Absolutely. Another guy that shined at the Senior Bowl, Jeffrey Bassa, definitely raised his stock a little bit. Oregon guy, so people already knew about him, but yeah, definitely a guy that he's looking for day 2.
It was just a very good week for linebackers overall, and that's not usually the case. Before we get out of here, it's hard to have takeaways on running backs.
Yeah.
I didn't think anybody like really exploded off the tape to me. Brashard Smith from SMU, I think he also declared. No, he's a fourth-year senior. Thought he looked good. LaQuint Allen from Syracuse did declare, caught some people by surprise. Thought he looked athletic. R.J. Harvey, I'm going to take a victory lap on that. I had him as a top 10 running back when I barely even knew who this guy was. I forget how I even found out about him, and I watched him. I said, this guy's a spark plug. Now, he's a 5'7 3/4 spark plug, so he's a tiny back, but looks really athletic, good route tree. Was kind of behind the curve in college. I think he was a Wildcat quarterback in high school, and then he had some injuries, and I think he might have transferred. He's in his 6th year, so an older prospect. Not a guy I'm saying is going on day 2 or anything, but I liked watching him. Ollie Gordon looked like 2024 Ollie Gordon,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, he did. And that sucks because 2023 Ollie Gordon is... there's a lot of good backs in this class. I don't want to say top 5, but top 10 for sure.
Top 10 easily, I would
And
say.
2024 Ollie Gordon isn't in the top 20 because this is a really good running back class.
I don't think 2024 Ollie Gordon is in the top 20 of most running back classes, to be honest with you.
That's fair. That's fair.
To me, he looks like an RB3 power back on his 2024 class. If you're drafting him, it's
Because
because
KJ Dillon.
you didn't have to bring that up,
Yeah,
man.
sorry.
If you're drafting him, you're hoping to get some of the 2024 juice back. My mind goes to 2 places with him. He's either playing hurt to some capacity or he's out of shape. I haven't done the eval on him. I'm not going to speculate as to what's going on, but they're 2 different players, and something's going on. It was just unfortunate that we didn't see him get some of that juice back because, man, fantastic running back class and super deep as well. He is rapidly sliding towards undrafted free agency. Any takeaways on the quarterbacks?
No.
Other than Jalen Milroe cannot throw the football?
No. There's really no takeaways. One last one on Ollie Gordon.
Go ahead.
If you want to know how bad the season was for him, his game against Tulsa, we saw him play.
He got bottled up
Yeah, he ran 17 times for 41 yards. It's 2.4 yards a carry
against Tulsa.
against Tulsa. If you watched any Tulsa football this year, which I hope you didn't, because it was that bad. If you watched any Tulsa football this year, you know anybody could run on this team. The Northeastern State running back had more yards on 1 carry than he did in the entire game. The first play of the game against Northeastern State, I believe, he broke one for a 75-yard touchdown. Ollie Gordon, he put up more yards on the first play of the game than Ollie Gordon did in the entire game. I mean, it's rough.
That's a bad sign for Ollie.
Yeah.
I kind of, because this was like early in the
Yeah, it was
season
week
when
3.
they played. That's kind of when the alarm bells started going off in my head. Like, okay, why are we keeping frickin' Ollie Gordon contained? Turned out it was an Ollie Gordon issue, not a Tulsa excellent performance.
It was probably the raging student section that got him rattled.
Jingling the keys.
Yeah, all 6 guys over there.
That was early in the season when it was still mostly full.
Yeah, that was true. But dude, by the end, it was rough.
There were a lot of frat boys with keys doing
Yep.
their part.
There
It
were.
was DUI, right? So he's got that character red flag as well.
Oh yeah, so I mean, because he is all that, I don't know if he gets drafted.
Very
It's
well
an
may
Oklahoma
not.
State guy, so you
At best, he's Chuba Hubbard.
yeah,
That's the
Yeah.
best case scenario, but Chuba Hubbard, I think, has outstanding football character.
yeah, but and also I don't think he could be Chuba Hubbard. I think Chuba Hubbard's top 10 back in the league right now.
There are a lot of good running backs in the NFL, and I don't think that that's unreasonable.
He's at least in the conversation. But yeah, quarterbacks, nobody.
Holy hell, Jalen Milroe was bad for most
Yeah.
of this one.
Man, him.
He was less accurate than Taylor Elgersma from Laurier University in Canada by like a noticeable margin.
I honestly think it's commendable what he's doing right now. Him and Quinn Ewers, we thought it may be a race between them for the QB1. No, it's going to be a race for them between the last QB off the board. Because one of them, they'll probably get drafted, but man, they both have tanked their stock. Like, it is insane. And, I mean, we thought one of them would be the QB3 this year for sure. And it's looking like it's going to be someone, the consensus QB3. It's looking like Jackson Dart is going to
Dart
take
had a
that
good week.
spot. Will Howard overall had a really strong playoff performance. So, heck, even Kyle McCord has a better argument. So, both of those guys, man, it's just an all-time bad day to be an Alabama or Texas fan this season overall, which is great because, I mean, if you're a Texas fan, go fuck yourself, man.
Burn in hell.
Like, legitimately, I hate y'all more than I hate the Raiders, and that's saying a lot.
Jalen Milroe has 8 3/4 inch hands. Let me look up what Kenny Pickett was at. And look, I'm not he doesn't cross the measurable threshold. He's not a draftable prospect. I'm not a guy like that.
It does matter a little.
Kenny Pickett has not been an inspiring player in the NFL, and I don't know if you saw his pump fake against the Cowboys.
I did, yeah. I did.
I think it's a real thing when your hands
you're talking
are
about
as small
Super
as
Bowl
Milroe's
winning
are.
quarterback Kenny Pickett here.
Kenny Pickett was 8.5.
Oh, boy.
The threshold is usually 9 inches.
Yeah, 9.5, something like that.
Look, if Milroe had really good command of the football, it'd be okay. That's fine with me. What makes it even more complicated is his deep ball's really pretty where he can kind of get under it a little bit, but on the drive throws, he's just legitimately scattershot.
Yeah.
And when your hands are that small, I don't know if it's correctable.
And it's so difficult because his throwing motion is just really erratic,
Whippy.
especially in the short to intermediate game. So it's just like when you're going to throw with that erratic of a ball, the ball's going to slip out of your hands a lot, and we saw it. Especially in the Oklahoma game, we saw it slip out of his hands, and it just made errant throw after errant throw. So also it doesn't help that he just doesn't really see the field. He makes stupid decisions a lot.
His feet and his eyes were not synced at the Senior Bowl at all.
No.
It was not helping his accuracy, his footwork.
He's really athletic, but he doesn't do well under pressure. He has no idea when it's coming to him. He has no idea where the pocket's moving, when he's clean, when he's not. Overall, just not many great traits outside of the pretty deep ball on the elite athletic traits.
He's got like 25 fumbles over the last 2 seasons. I got to wonder, though, how many of those are strip sacks in the pocket? My God, is he a running back?
I'd give him a shot.
He's 6'1 and a half, 220.
I'd give him a shot at QB.
I would give him a shot at QB, too.
But
I hope
for
he's
everyone,
open to
for
it.
everyone making the Lamar comparisons, Lamar was so much more polished as a passer coming out.
Oh, definitely. Lamar didn't have that. He had throws that he missed.
Yeah,
Jalen Milroe
was
was
raw.
scattershot throwing the football.
He was raw, but there was never a question if he was a running back or not. People talked because they were idiots, but no
Yes.
NFL GM worth any salt or nobody that's still employed in football today thought that he was a running back. They all knew he would be a quarterback because he had that talent. Milroe, it is a question.
As the last thing before we get out of here, I'm going to read the best offensive line prospects that were at the Senior Bowl and give you like a basic one-liner on how I felt they performed. Jonas Savanaia, offensive lineman from Arizona. I think he's taken a little bit of work at guard. Tackle guard prospect. We'll see where he lands. Thought he was iffy. Marcus Mbow from Purdue, 6'4", 309. Don't see a ton of play strength on tape. I've heard some scouts say he's potentially a center at the
But
next
if you're
level.
going to be a center that tall with no play strength, you're going to have a tough time.
He got detonated at the Senior Bowl. He is not ready right now to hang with NFL strength, in my opinion. Emory Jones is the worst player in the group. I think I'm not calling him like a shit football player or anything. He's just limited athletically. He looked limited athletically. Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota, a similar player. Play strength looked good. I mean, it better. He's 339
really strong,
pounds. Guys got around him, I thought. I think he's a guard.
Yeah, fair.
Armand Membu from Missouri measured in pretty well. Well, 33 inch. He measured in fine, and then he got sick and didn't practice, which, the Senior Bowl against this defensive line class, good decision, Armand.
Yeah, what was his arm length?
33 and an eighth.
Oh, okay. That's about.
That's fine.
That's about what I expect Will Campbell to measure in at.
Josh Connerly Jr., left tackle from Oregon. We all saw the rep of him getting annihilated by Mike Green. Now,
Mike Green, that's my boy.
I do want to preface that a little bit. For one, and people have mentioned this, he was at right tackle. So the footwork is flipped. He has never played right tackle before in his life. And when you're thinking about your feet, it's very easy to, kind of be absent mentally for a split second and not be able to anchor against Mike Green, who is literally throwing his entire body at you. The second thing I want to say about that is Mike Green kind of just threw his entire body at him. Like, they both ended up on the ground. I didn't think that was the best rep of the week. It was just a very good win by Mike Green. That being said, I thought Connerly had a few too many losses to finesse and a few too many losses to power. I thought he looked like a day 2 prospect. And then finally, Wyatt Milam, who is a brick wall at offensive tackle for West Virginia this year, one of the most efficient pass protectors in the country, looked authentically bad. barely got a shot at tackle because he was getting just raced out to his outside shoulder every snap. It felt like it felt like that was a non-starter, which surprised me. And then they moved him to guard, and I thought he was worse than guys like Willie Lampkin from North Carolina, who is, let me check this, 5'10 and a half, 270. Guys like Jackson Slater from Sac State, who made some money today. I think he's at worst, 4th, 5th round pick. He looked really good. Milam is a gamble at this point. It feels like how we saw him perform at guard obviously can get better as he gets more comfortable with the footwork stuff. You can't project anything at this point. I don't know if he's a day 2 player.
And that's the tough thing because you watch this Penn State game and it's just like, man, that's a good player. That's a good player. Because, I mean, he does when you're a bigger offensive tackle. I think Will Campbell does this really well. One of the reasons why I loved him so much. Will Campbell's a great athlete, to be clear. I'm just saying, the few times a guy got around him, what you have to be able to do is you have to be able to hold him up with one arm. You have to be able to do that long enough. So it's like he gets around your shoulder. So you kind of put your arm on his chest and hold him up long enough for the other arm to get there so that you can push him to the ground. Now, Milam was fantastic at this against Carter. And I don't know where it went. He was able to hold up Carter, and he was actually able to get to his depth relatively quickly, enough to semi-consistently stop Abdul Carter from just beating him with the outside shoulder. And when Carter tried counters, Milam was on it. He really was. So, I don't know. He looked great. He looked really strong. So, I don't know where that went. Maybe it's an injury, something like that. You'd like to project him better, but this is definitely going to lose him some money.
I was really excited for him. He was in one of my stock up Instagram posts. I thought that he might go on.
Follow Psychics NFL on Instagram.
Thank you so much for the shout out, Victor. I said that was going to be the last thing I do, but no. As the last word, I said I wasn't going to go after really late round prospects. Trey Rucker from Oklahoma State.
Oh boy.
Oklahoma State, I think, was the worst player in attendance.
No.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I don't.
Fuck you, Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And those are our takeaways from the big game. And we can promise with 75% certainty that our next episode will kick off draft season on BTS. But seriously, we're firing on all cylinders over here, and I can't wait. Victor, any last remarks before we finally get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, this was a preview of kind of what draft season is going to look like. But next week, theoretically, this is purely theoretical, and you guys know what theoretical means.
Theoretical, like theoretical physics.
Exactly.
We really don't know.
Exactly. We don't know. Theoretical as in okay, it might happen, it might. Not theoretical as in it's not real. But theoretically, the first edition of the BallsTalkSports mock draft for the 2025 season should theoretically come out next week. We've been putting in a lot of work these past couple of weeks to get ready for this mock draft. Now, we're not going to put it out unless we feel like it is of actual quality. We can promise with, as you said, 75% certainty that a draft episode will come out next week.
At some point in the future.
At some point in the future, we will have a draft episode. And at the very latest, this is not theoretical, 2 weeks from now, you'll have a mock draft. But we're working really hard to get all the early guys done so we kind of can manage that and know what we're talking about. But mock draft is going to be insane. Top 10s are going to be insane. We've got more ideas than that. You know what? Free agency is coming up soon. So even though the football season's over, BallsTalkSports season is just beginning. And then April passes, and then we have nothing to do for 5 months. But,
ladies and gentlemen, as always, Tyler Shuck QB1, and stay hard.